1870, Oklahoma Territory. Rebecca Mackenzie had exactly 3 seconds to decide whether to shoot the stranger before he reached her porch. Her fingers tightened on the rifle as the man stumbled through the snow toward her cabin, his dark coat plastered with ice. Behind him, in the distance, she could see riders. At least 5 of them, moving fast across the frozen prairie. She raised the weapon. He saw it, and kept coming anyway. That was the first warning something was wrong. Men who meant harm usually slowed down when they saw a gun. This one ran faster, his boots crunching through the snowdrift that had piled against her fence. Rebecca stepped onto the porch, the winter air biting through her wool dress. Her breath came out in white clouds. The thermometer nailed to her cabin wall read 15 degrees, and the wind made it feel like knives against exposed skin. The man reached her yard. She could see him clearly now. Early 30s, dark hair wild beneath a worn hat, stubble covering a strong jaw, blue eyes that locked onto hers with desperate intensity. He didn't slow down. Rebecca took aim at his chest. Her hands were steady. Living alone on the frontier for 6 months had taught her not to hesitate. The man reached the porch steps and did something she never expected. He grabbed the rifle barrel with one hand and shoved it skyward. The shot fired harmlessly into the gray winter sky. Before she could scream, he threw her over his shoulder like a sack of grain and ran. Rebecca's world turned upside down. Her stomach pressed against solid muscle. Her hair fell loose from its pins, cascading toward the snow-covered ground. The rifle clattered onto the porch. Fury exploded through her chest. She pounded her fists against his back, kicked her legs, screamed every curse word she'd ever heard. He didn't slow down. His arm locked around her thighs like an iron band, holding her in place as he sprinted toward the tree line behind her cabin. The riders were close now. She could hear their horses, the jingle of bridles, shouts carried on the winter wind. Then, she heard the gunshot. The bullet hit the cabin wall exactly where she'd been standing 3 seconds earlier. Wood splintered. Another shot followed. Then, another. Rebecca stopped struggling. The man ran faster, his breathing harsh but controlled. He crashed through the first line of bare trees, branches whipping past them. Snow fell from disturbed limbs, dusting her burgundy dress with white powder. More gunshots. The riders were at her cabin now. She heard men dismounting, boots on her porch, the crash of her door being kicked open. The outlaw carried her deeper into the woods. Her cabin disappeared from view. The sounds of destruction followed them. Breaking glass, splintering furniture, men laughing. They were tearing her home apart. Rebecca's throat tightened. Everything she owned was in that cabin. The few possessions she'd managed to bring when she fled. The supplies she'd scraped together. Her father's pocket watch, hidden under a loose floorboard. All of it being destroyed by men whose faces she hadn't even seen. The stranger finally slowed, breathing hard. He moved behind a massive fallen oak, its roots creating a natural shelter. Carefully, he lowered her to her feet. Rebecca stumbled, catching herself against the frozen trunk. Her legs shook. Whether from cold, fear, or rage, she couldn't tell. She turned to face him. Up close, he was even more striking. Tall, at least 6 feet, with broad shoulders beneath the heavy coat. Those blue eyes studied her with concern, not the predatory look she'd learned to recognize. A scar cut through his left eyebrow. His hands, now held up in a gesture of peace, were calloused and strong. Rebecca slapped him. The crack echoed through the winter woods. Her palm stung. His head snapped to the side, a red mark blooming on his stubbled cheek. He didn't move to retaliate, just touched his face and looked at her steadily. She wanted to hit him again. She wanted to run. She wanted to scream until her voice gave out. Instead, she hissed, "Who are you? Why did you do that?" His voice was rough, deeper than she expected. "Luke Carson. And I just saved your life. By kidnapping me? By keeping you from getting shot." He gestured back toward where her cabin stood. Those men weren't coming to chat. Rebecca's hands curled into fists. Her whole body trembled now, and not just from the cold seeping through her dress. "That's my home. Everything I own is in there." Something flickered in his eyes. Understanding, maybe. Or guilt. "I'm sorry, but you being alive matters more than furniture. You don't know anything about me." Her voice cracked. "You don't know what it cost me to get here, what I gave up, what I survived to have that cabin." Luke Carson's expression shifted. The desperate urgency faded, replaced by something softer. "You're right. I don't know your story. But I know those men. And I know what they do to women they find alone." The words hit her like a physical blow. Because she knew too. She'd spent years learning exactly what men like that were capable of. That's why she'd come to Oklahoma Territory in the first place. To disappear. To be somewhere her past couldn't find her. Apparently, she'd failed. Rebecca wrapped her arms around herself. The wind cut through the trees, carrying snow that stung her exposed skin. Her shawl had fallen during the struggle. Her dress, while wool, wasn't meant for standing still in winter weather. Already, her fingers were going numb. Luke seemed to notice. He shrugged out of his heavy coat and held it toward her. She stared at it, like it might bite. "Take it," he said quietly. "You're freezing. I don't want anything from you. Want and need are different things." He stepped closer, moving slowly, like he was approaching a spooked horse. "I'm not your enemy, Rebecca Mackenzie." Her eyes snapped to his face. "How do you know my name?" "Your mailbox. Saw it when I was checking if the cabin was occupied." He still held the coat out. "Please, I've got layers." "You don't." Pride warred with practicality. Pride lost. Rebecca snatched the coat and pulled it on. It smelled like leather and wood smoke, and something else she couldn't identify. The warmth was immediate and shamefully wonderful. Luke nodded, satisfied. Then he moved to the edge of their shelter, peering back toward the cabin. Rebecca watched him. Now that the immediate terror had faded, questions crowded her mind. Why were they chasing you? Long story. We appear to have time. He glanced at her, and something almost like humor touched his mouth. Fair point. His attention returned to the woods. They think I stole something from their boss. I didn't. But they're not interested in my version of events. What kind of something? Money. A lot of it. Rebecca's stomach dropped. Are you an outlaw? Not by choice. His jaw tightened. I was framed. Wrong place, wrong time. Now I'm running while I try to prove I'm innocent. She wanted to believe him. The desperate, broken part of her that had fled her own past wanted to believe anyone could be falsely accused, could be running from something that wasn't their fault. But she'd learned the hard way that wanting something didn't make it true. From the direction of her cabin, a man shouted. The sound carried through the cold air, words unclear but tone unmistakable. Anger. Frustration. Luke's hand moved to his hip. Rebecca saw the gun there for the first time, holstered and hidden by his shirt. He didn't draw it, but his fingers rested on the grip. "How many are there?" she whispered. "I counted 6 when they first started chasing me. Maybe more joined them." He looked at her. "The man they work for is named Bartholomew Sutton. You heard of him?" Rebecca shook her head. "He's trying to control all the good land in this part of the territory, buys some legal, takes the rest through intimidation. Or worse." Luke's voice hardened. "That cabin of yours, it's sitting on prime grazing land. Creek nearby, natural shelter from the north wind. He probably wants it." Her heart sank. "I have a legal claim, filed with the land office and everything. Sutton doesn't care about legal. He's got enough money to make problems disappear, and enough men to make people disappear." The implications settled over her like the falling snow. Cold, suffocating, inescapable. She'd run from one nightmare straight into another. Rebecca closed her eyes. For 6 months, she'd been building something here. A life, a future. Safety. She'd planted a winter garden in the root cellar. Cut enough firewood to last until spring. Made friends with her nearest neighbors, the Hendersons, who lived 3 miles west. She'd finally started to breathe again. And now this. When she opened her eyes, Luke was watching her, not with pity, which she would have hated, but with recognition, like he saw himself in her struggle. "You're running from something too," he said. Not a question. Rebecca didn't answer. He nodded slowly. "Thought so. You've got that look. Same one I see in the mirror." More shouting from the cabin. Closer this time. They were searching. Luke's expression sharpened. "We need to move. They'll start checking the woods soon." "Where are we supposed to go?" "It's 15 degrees. There's a blizzard coming. I can smell it in the air." "I know." He looked at the gray sky visible through the bare branches. "Storms may be 2 hours out. 3 if we're lucky. We need shelter before it hits." "My cabin is shelter. Your cabin is full of men who want us dead." He held her gaze. "I'm sorry. I know that's not fair. But it's true." Rebecca wanted to argue. She wanted to march back there and demand they leave her property. She wanted to stand her ground and fight for the one good thing she'd managed to build. But she'd learned another hard lesson over the years. Sometimes survival meant retreat. Sometimes living to fight another day was the only victory you could claim. She took a shaky breath. "Fine. Where do we go?" Relief flickered across Luke's face. "There's an old trapper's cabin about 5 miles northeast, abandoned, last I knew. It's not much, but it'll keep us alive through the storm." 5 miles in this weather? "You have a better idea?" She didn't. Luke moved to leave their shelter, then paused. "Can you shoot?" "Yes." "Good." He drew his gun, checked it, then held it out to her handle first. "Take this. I've got a rifle on my horse." Rebecca stared at the weapon. A Colt revolver, well maintained despite obvious wear. The grip was smooth from use. "Where's your horse?" she asked. "Tied about a quarter-mile back. I left him when I realized those riders were headed for your cabin." His hand didn't waver. "Take it, Rebecca. I need to know you can protect yourself if we get separated." She took the gun. It was heavier than she expected, the metal cold even through the borrowed coat. She checked the cylinder like her father had taught her. 5 rounds loaded, hammer on the empty chamber. Safe carry. Luke watched her handle the weapon with approval. "You know your way around a gun. My father believed women should be able to defend themselves." Smart man. He was. The words came out rougher than intended. Her father had been dead 3 years. She still missed him with an ache that never quite faded. More sounds from the direction of the cabin. Breaking wood. Men's voices, arguing about something. Luke touched her arm gently. "Time to go." They moved through the winter woods, Luke leading the way with confident steps despite the snow. He seemed to know where he was going, picking routes that kept them hidden but relatively easy to travel. Rebecca followed, her mind racing. Everything she'd worked for, destroyed in minutes. Her supplies, her food, her father's watch, all of it gone or soon to be stolen by Sutton's men. She'd escaped one monster, only to attract another's attention. The bitter irony made her want to laugh. Or cry. She did neither. The wind picked up, cutting through even Luke's heavy coat. Snow fell faster now, the flakes smaller and harder. The kind that meant a serious storm was building. They'd been walking for maybe 10 minutes when Luke stopped suddenly. He held up one hand in a silent command to halt. Rebecca froze. He listened, his head cocked. Then she heard it too. Voices. Behind them. Not close, but not far enough away either. They were being followed. Luke's jaw tightened. He gestured for her to stay low and moved forward in a crouch. Rebecca followed, her heart hammering. They reached his horse a few minutes later. A sturdy bay gelding, tied to a tree and stamping nervously. The animal's ears swiveled toward the distant voices. Luke untied him quickly, murmuring something soothing. Then he turned to Rebecca. "Can you ride?" "Yes." "Good. We're both getting on. Faster that way, and we need speed, more than we need to leave separate tracks." He swung into the saddle with practiced ease, then reached down for her. Rebecca hesitated only a second before taking his hand. His grip was strong and sure as he pulled her up behind him. She settled onto the horse's back, her arms automatically going around Luke's waist to hold on. Through his shirt, she could feel solid muscle and warmth. His heart beat steady against her cheek. It had been a long time since she'd been this close to a man. Years since she'd allowed anyone in her personal space. Her body tensed, old instincts screaming at her to pull away, to run, to protect herself. But there was nowhere to run. And this man, this stranger, had just saved her life. She forced herself to hold on. Luke kicked the horse into motion. The gelding responded immediately, moving from a walk to a trot to a ground-eating lope in seconds. Trees flashed past. Snow flew from the horse's hooves. Behind them, someone shouted. A gunshot cracked through the air. The horse stretched into a gallop. Rebecca pressed herself against Luke's back as branches whipped past them. The cold air burned her lungs. Her hands locked together over his stomach, holding on for dear life as the horse raced through the forest. More gunshots. None came close, but the sound alone was terrifying. Luke guided the horse with expert hands, dodging trees and jumping fallen logs. The animal responded like they'd been partners for years, trusting his rider completely. They burst out of the tree line into open prairie. The wind hit them like a wall, brutal and unforgiving. Snow swirled in the air, reducing visibility to maybe 50 yards. The storm was here. Luke leaned forward, and Rebecca did the same, making themselves smaller against the wind. The horse's mane whipped back into her face. She closed her eyes against the stinging ice and just held on. Time became meaningless. They rode through white emptiness, the world reduced to the horse's rhythm and Luke's solid warmth. Rebecca's face went numb. Her hands, even in his coat pockets, lost feeling. She'd never been this cold in her life. Just when she thought she couldn't hold on anymore, Luke slowed the horse. She opened her eyes, blinking against the snow. A shape emerged from the white. A small structure, barely visible through the storm. The trapper's cabin. Luke guided the horse to the side where a crude lean-to provided minimal shelter. He dismounted quickly, then reached up for Rebecca. She tried to let go. Her hands wouldn't respond. Her fingers had locked into position. Luke saw the problem. Gently, he pried her hands apart, his own fingers working hers loose. Even through the numbness, his touch was careful. When her hands were free, he lifted her down from the horse. Rebecca's legs buckled. She would have fallen if Luke hadn't caught her, his arm around her waist, supporting her weight. "Easy," he said. "You're okay. Just cold." She couldn't stop shaking. Her teeth chattered so hard she bit her tongue, tasting copper. Luke moved fast. He tied the horse in the lean-to, giving the animal what protection was available. Then, he half-carried Rebecca to the cabin door. It was barred from the outside, a thick piece of wood wedged across it. Luke knocked it aside and kicked the door open. They stumbled into darkness and blessed relief from the wind. Luke lowered her gently to the floor, then turned back to shut the door against the storm. Immediately, the howling reduced to a dull roar. Rebecca sat where he'd left her, still shaking. Her eyes adjusted slowly. The cabin was tiny, maybe 12 feet square. A crude fireplace took up one wall. A broken chair sat in the corner. That was it. No supplies, no food, no firewood stacked and ready. They were going to freeze to death. Luke seemed to reach the same conclusion. He moved to the fireplace, kneeling to check the chimney. "Flue's clear. That's something." He looked around. "I'll break up that chair for kindling. We need fire fast." Rebecca tried to respond. Her jaw wouldn't work properly. Luke's attention snapped to her. In the dim light filtering through gaps in the walls, she saw his expression shift from focused to worried. He moved to her side, kneeling. "Rebecca, look at me." She managed to meet his eyes. "You're hypothermic. We need to get you warm. Understand?" She nodded. Or tried to. Her head felt disconnected from her body. Luke worked fast. He pulled his coat tighter around her, then moved to the chair. One solid kick broke off a leg. Another sent splinters flying. Within minutes, he had a pile of wood. From somewhere in his clothes, he produced matches. Dry ones, kept in a waterproof tin. He built a fire with practiced efficiency, kindling first, then larger pieces as the flames caught and grew. Orange light filled the cabin. Warmth began to radiate from the small blaze. Luke returned to Rebecca. "Can you move closer to the fire?" She tried. Her legs wouldn't cooperate. "Okay." Luke's voice stayed calm. "I'm going to help you. Is that all right?" Some distant part of her brain registered the question. He was asking permission. Even now, freezing and in danger, he was asking permission to touch her. She nodded. He lifted her carefully, moving her closer to the fire. Then he sat beside her, close but not touching. "We're going to be okay," he said. "Fire's going, doors shut, storm will pass. We just have to wait it out." Rebecca stared at the flames. Slowly, painfully, feeling began to return to her extremities. It hurt. Her fingers burned as blood flow resumed. Her toes felt like they were being stabbed with needles. She whimpered before she could stop herself. Luke shifted closer. "I know it hurts. That's actually good. Means you're warming up. The dangerous thing is when you stop feeling pain." His voice was steady, reassuring. She focused on it, using it as an anchor while her body screamed. Time passed. The fire grew. Luke fed it regularly, breaking up more of the chair. The cabin warmed from unbearable to merely uncomfortable. Rebecca's shaking gradually subsided. She could move her fingers again, though they ached fiercely. Her mind cleared. She looked at Luke. Really looked at him for the first time since he'd thrown her over his shoulder. In the firelight, his face showed exhaustion. Dark circles under those blue eyes. Lines of stress around his mouth. A healing cut above his left eyebrow. Probably a few days old. He looked like a man who'd been running for a long time. "Thank you," she said. Her voice came out hoarse. Luke glanced at her, surprise flickering across his features. "For kidnapping you? For saving my life. Twice now, I think." "You're welcome." He poked at the fire. "Sorry about your cabin." Rebecca pulled his coat tighter around herself. The loss ached, but she was alive to feel it. That counted for something. "You said those men work for Bartholomew Sutton." "That's right. Tell me about him." Luke was quiet for a moment. Then he started talking. Bartholomew Sutton had come to Oklahoma Territory 3 years ago with money and ambition. Army deserter, Luke said, though he'd covered his tracks well. Built himself a ranch empire through a combination of legal purchases and illegal intimidation. "He's smart," Luke said. "Methodical. Doesn't rush. He identifies land he wants, makes a reasonable offer. If that's refused, things start happening. Livestock go missing. Barns catch fire. Wells get poisoned. Eventually, people sell. Or they disappear. And no one stops him? He's got the territorial marshal in his pocket. Local law is scared of him. He's built something that looks legitimate on the surface." Luke's jaw tightened. "The money he claims I stole? It was payment for land he took from a family of homesteaders. The Brennans. Good people. They wouldn't sell. So Sutton's men burned them out. When I tried to help them rebuild, I got blamed for the theft." Rebecca studied his profile. Why would he frame you specifically? Because I saw something I wasn't supposed to see. One of his men beating Mrs. Brennan. I intervened, broke the man's jaw. Luke's voice went flat. Made an enemy that day. Sutton decided to kill two birds with one stone. Get rid of me and discredit anyone who might speak against him. Where are the Brennans now? Gone. Left the territory after the fire. I don't blame them. He looked at her. Smart people run from Sutton. I should have, but I'm stubborn. Thought I could prove my innocence. Now I'm just trying to stay alive. The storm howled outside. Wind rattled the cabin walls. Snow found every crack and gap, dusting the floor with white powder. Rebecca fed another piece of wood to the fire. I know about running from dangerous men. Luke went still. Then, carefully, your husband? He wasn't my husband, but he thought he owned me anyway. The words came out before she could stop them. She'd never told anyone, never spoken it aloud. But something about this moment, this man, made her want to share her truth. His name was Thomas Brennan, she said. No relation to your homesteaders. He owned the ranch where my father worked as foreman. When my father died, Thomas decided I came with the property. Luke's hands curled into fists. I said no. He didn't care. Rebecca's voice stayed steady. She'd had 3 years to process this, to survive it. He was powerful, respected. No one believed me when I tried to tell them what he was doing. So I stopped trying. I planned. I saved every penny. And 6 months ago, when he was away on a cattle drive, I left. Took a stagecoach to the end of the line, then a wagon train the rest of the way. Filed a land claim under my mother's maiden name. Started over. He's looking for you, Luke said quietly. Probably, but Oklahoma Territory is a long way from Texas. I thought I'd be safe here. She laughed, the sound bitter. Apparently, I was wrong. Sutton doesn't know about Thomas. This is just bad luck. Wrong place, wrong time. Story of my life. They sat in silence, both staring into the flames. Outside, the blizzard raged. Inside, warmth and firelight kept the darkness at bay. Rebecca realized something. She wasn't afraid of Luke. She should be. She was alone with a strange man, miles from help, in a situation where he had all the power. But she wasn't afraid. Maybe it was exhaustion. Maybe it was shock. Or maybe it was the way he'd asked permission before touching her. The way he'd given her his gun. The way he looked at her like she was a person, not property. Why did you help me? She asked. You could have just run past my cabin, left me to whatever Sutton's men had planned. Luke was quiet for a long time. Then, my mother was alone when the raiders came. They killed her. I was 12. I've spent the last 20 years wishing someone had been there to help her, to save her. He looked at Rebecca. I can't change my past, but I could change yours. So I did. Something cracked in Rebecca's chest. Not breaking. Opening. She'd been so focused on surviving that she'd forgotten what kindness looked like, what decency was. Luke Carson was an outlaw, a wanted man, running for his life. And he'd still stopped to save a stranger. I'm sorry about your mother, she said softly. Me too. The fire crackled. Snow hissed against the cabin walls. Rebecca shifted slightly closer to Luke. Not touching, but near enough to share warmth. He didn't move away. They sat together. Two broken people, finding unexpected shelter in the storm. Hours passed. The blizzard showed no signs of stopping. Luke checked on the horse periodically, making sure the animal was as protected as possible. Each time he opened the door, brutal wind and snow tried to force their way inside. He'd shut it quickly, returning to the fire with fresh ice crystals, coating his hat and shoulders. "Horse is holding up," he reported after the third check. "Not comfortable, but alive. That's what matters in weather like this." Rebecca nodded. She'd added the last piece of the broken chair to the flames. "We're going to run out of fuel." Luke looked around the cabin. "Door frame is loose. We can burn that if we have to. And there's the floorboards. We'll stay warm." The casual way he said it, like destroying the cabin to survive, was just practical thinking. Made her realize how serious their situation was. This storm could last days. They had no food, limited water from melting snow, and only what they could burn to keep from freezing. They might not make it. Rebecca pushed the thought away. She'd survived worse. She'd survive this too. "Tell me about where you're from," she said. Talking helped. It kept her mind off the cold seeping through the walls, the hunger already starting in her belly, the fear that Sutton's men might find them even in this weather. Luke settled back against the wall. "Nothing much to tell. Grew up in Kansas. My father was a farmer before he died. After my mother was killed, I worked ranches, learned to rope and ride and handle cattle. Fought in the war." "Which side?" "Union. Cavalry. Saw some things I wish I could forget." His hand unconsciously touched the scar through his eyebrow. "After the war, I drifted. Worked where I could. Tried to stay out of trouble. How's that working for you?" He smiled, and it transformed his face. Made him look younger, less haunted. Not great, obviously. Rebecca found herself smiling back. "What will you do? After you clear your name, I mean." The smile faded. "If I clear my name? Sutton's powerful. I'm nobody. Even if I prove I'm innocent, he'll just find another way to destroy me. Men like him don't forgive. So you run forever?" "Maybe. Or maybe I stand and fight. Haven't decided yet." He looked at her. "What about you? After this storm passes, what's your plan?" Rebecca hadn't let herself think that far ahead. "I don't know. My cabin's probably destroyed. Even if it's not, Sutton knows where I am now. He'll keep coming. You could leave the territory. Start over somewhere else." "I'm tired of running." The words surprised her. But once she said them, Rebecca realized they were true. "I've spent 3 years looking over my shoulder, building walls, being afraid. I don't want to live like that anymore. Sometimes running is the smart choice. Maybe. But sometimes standing your ground is the brave one." Luke studied her face in the firelight. "You're stronger than you look." "I have to be. No one else is going to protect me." "I am," he said quietly. The words hung in the air between them. A promise. An offer. Maybe something more. Rebecca's heart beat faster. "You don't owe me anything. You already saved my life. This isn't about owing. This is about what's right." Luke leaned forward, his blue eyes intense. "Sutton's men destroyed your home. They would have killed you, or worse. That's not okay with me. So yeah, I'm going to protect you. At least until you're safe. I might never be safe. Then I guess I'll be around for a while. Something warm unfurled in Rebecca's chest. Not just from the fire, from his words, from the way he looked at her like she mattered. She'd been alone for so long, taking care of herself, trusting no one, expecting nothing from anyone. The idea that someone might actually help her, not because they wanted something but because they thought it was right, felt almost impossible to believe. But Luke had already proven himself. He'd saved her life twice. Given her his coat and his gun, shared his fire and his story. Maybe, just maybe, she could trust him. The storm continued through the night. They took turns sleeping, one always awake to tend the fire. When it was Rebecca's watch, she studied Luke's face in the firelight. Asleep, he looked younger, peaceful. The hard lines around his mouth softened. She wondered what he'd been like before life made him hard, before war and loss and false accusations. She wondered if underneath all that armor, there was still softness, still hope. She wondered the same thing about herself. When morning came, the storm hadn't stopped. Gray light filtered through the gaps in the walls. The temperature inside the cabin had dropped during the night despite the fire. Rebecca's breath made clouds in the air. Luke woke, instantly alert. How long was I out? Few hours. You needed it. He sat up, stretching. His shirt had dried overnight, she noticed. It pulled across his shoulders, and she quickly looked away. We need to ration our energy, Luke said. Storm like this, we could be trapped for days. No food means we have to be smart. Rebecca's stomach growled in response. She'd eaten lunch yesterday, but dinner had never happened. Now it was morning, and she was already hungry. This was going to be a long few days. They spent the day talking. There wasn't much else to do. Luke told her about his time in the cavalry, carefully editing out the worst parts. Rebecca told him about her father, how he'd taught her to read and shoot and think for herself. He sounds like a good man, Luke said. He was. He would have liked you. What makes you say that? He believed actions mattered more than words. You've proven what kind of man you are through what you've done, not what you've said. Luke looked uncomfortable with the praise. I'm just doing what anyone decent would do. That's where you're wrong. Most people wouldn't risk their lives for a stranger. Most people would have ridden past my cabin and counted themselves lucky to escape. Then most people are cowards. Rebecca smiled. Maybe. Or maybe you're just better than you think you are. He didn't have an answer for that. By evening, the storm had intensified. Wind screamed around the cabin, finding every weakness in the structure. Snow drifted through gaps, piling in small white hills on the floor. The temperature dropped so low that water left near the fire developed ice crystals. They huddled close to the flames, sharing warmth. Luke had insisted Rebecca keep his coat. He wore only his shirt, but he claimed he'd been through worse winters in the war. Rebecca wasn't sure she believed him, but she was too cold to argue. Tell me something good, she said, her teeth chattering despite the fire. Something happy, from before everything went wrong. Luke thought for a moment. There was this girl in Kansas, before the war, Sarah Jenkins, prettiest thing I'd ever seen. Red hair, green eyes, smile that could light up a room. What happened? Nothing. I was too shy to talk to her, just watched her from a distance and hoped she'd notice me. He smiled at the memory. She married the blacksmith's son. Last I heard, they had 4 kids and a farm outside Topeka. Do you regret not saying something? Sometimes. But then I think maybe it worked out the way it was supposed to. She got a good life. I got to go fight a war and become a wanted man. He laughed, but there was no humor in it. Not sure I would have made her happy. You don't know that. I know what war does to people. I know what I've seen, what I've done. Some things change you in ways you can't come back from. Rebecca understood that better than he knew. What if someone saw you anyway? Not the war veteran or the wanted man, but the person underneath all that. Luke looked at her. The firelight reflected in his eyes, turning them almost gold. Then I'd say that person was either very brave or very foolish. Maybe both. They were close now. Close enough that she could see the individual whiskers of his stubble, the tiny scar at the corner of his mouth, the way his eyes darkened when he looked at her. Close enough to kiss. The thought came unbidden and shocking. Rebecca's breath caught. She hadn't wanted to be close to anyone in 3 years. Hadn't allowed herself to even think about intimacy or connection. But sitting here in this freezing cabin, running from men who wanted them dead, she suddenly wanted to close the distance between them. Wanted to know what his lips would feel like. Wanted to feel something other than fear and cold and loneliness. Luke seemed to sense the shift. His hand moved, hesitant, and touched her cheek. Just his fingertips, careful and questioning. Rebecca didn't pull away. "Tell me to stop," he said quietly. "I don't want you to stop." He leaned in slowly, giving her time to change her mind. His breath warmed her cold skin. His hand slid to cup her jaw. Then his lips touched hers, gentle as snowfall. The kiss was soft, questioning. Nothing like the brutal, demanding kisses she'd known before. Luke kissed her like she was precious, like she had a choice, like her yes mattered. Rebecca's eyes closed. Her hand came up to rest against his chest, feeling his heart beat strong and steady beneath her palm. The kiss deepened slightly, and warmth flooded through her that had nothing to do with the fire. When they parted, Luke pressed his forehead to hers. "Was that okay?" She almost laughed. He'd just kissed her and was asking if it was okay. Yes. That was okay. Good. He pulled back slightly, studying her face. "You're beautiful. You know that? I'm half frozen and haven't bathed in 2 days. Still beautiful." Rebecca felt heat rise in her cheeks. She wasn't used to compliments. Wasn't sure how to accept them. "You're not so bad yourself." High praise. But he smiled. They settled back against the wall, closer now. Luke's arm went around her shoulders, and Rebecca let herself lean into his warmth. It felt natural. Right. For the first time in 3 years, she felt safe with a man. The storm raged through the second night. They slept in shifts again, but now they slept pressed together, sharing body heat. Rebecca woke once to find Luke's arms around her, his chin resting on top of her head. She could hear his heart beating, feel his breath stirring her hair. She didn't move, just let herself have this moment of peace. Morning brought weaker wind, but continued snow. Luke checked on the horse again, coming back with a grim expression. We need to get out of here soon. Horse is struggling. Another day like this, and we'll lose him. Can we travel in this weather? Not yet. But if it breaks enough, we'll have to risk it. Rebecca nodded. She was so hungry now that her stomach had stopped growling and just ached constantly. They'd melted snow for water, but water wasn't food. Her body was starting to consume itself for energy. Luke wasn't doing much better. His face had hollowed out, exhaustion and hunger making him look gaunt. When we get out of this, Rebecca said, first thing I'm doing is eating an entire pot roast. I'm thinking bacon, about 2 pounds worth, fresh bread with butter, apple pie, beef stew with potatoes and carrots. They continued the game, describing elaborate meals until they were both half laughing, half crying with hunger and absurdity. It helped pass the time. By afternoon, the wind had died to occasional gusts. Snow still fell, but lighter now. The worst of the storm was passing. Luke stood at the door, studying the weather. We could make a run for it. Risky, but staying here much longer, and we're going to be too weak to travel at all. Where would we go? There's a town called Redemption about 15 miles southeast. Small place, but they've got a doctor, a general store, and a hotel. We could get supplies, rest, figure out our next move. Sutton's men might be there. They might. But they might also think we died in the storm. Either way, we can't stay here. Rebecca considered. He was right. They needed food and proper shelter. The cabin had kept them alive, but just barely. How long will it take to get there? In this weather? Best case, 5 hours. Worst case, we don't make it at all. Not encouraging odds, but better than starving to death in this cabin. Let's go, Rebecca said. They prepared quickly. Luke saddled the horse, murmuring apologies to the exhausted animal. Rebecca wrapped herself in his coat, knowing she'd need every bit of warmth for the journey ahead. Before they left, Luke turned to her. If something happens to me out there, you keep going. Follow the sun southeast. Don't stop for anything. Understand? Nothing's going to happen to you. Promise me. Rebecca. She looked into his blue eyes and saw determination. He meant to protect her, even at the cost of his own life. The knowledge settled in her chest, heavy and warm. I promise, she said, but I'm not leaving you behind. Stubborn woman. You have no idea. They mounted the horse together, Rebecca behind Luke like before. But this time, when she put her arms around his waist, it felt different. Not desperate fear, but connection. Trust. Maybe even something more. Luke guided the horse out into the storm. The world was white. White ground, white sky, white air filled with swirling snow. The wind cut through every layer, finding skin and freezing it instantly. Rebecca pressed her face against Luke's back, trying to shield herself. The horse struggled through drifts that sometimes reached its chest. Progress was agonizingly slow. Each step seemed to take forever. Luke navigated by instinct and whatever landmarks he could glimpse through the snow. A distinctive rock formation. A lone tree. The angle of the wind. Rebecca had no idea how he knew where he was going, but she trusted him. Hours passed. The gray light began to fade. Evening was coming, and they were still exposed on the open prairie. "There," Luke said suddenly. Rebecca lifted her head. Through the snow, she could see shapes. Buildings. Lights flickering in windows. Redemption. They'd made it. Luke guided the horse down the main street. A few people were visible through windows, but no one ventured outside in this weather. Smoke rose from chimneys. The smell of cooking food drifted on the wind. Rebecca's stomach clenched with desperate hunger. Luke stopped in front of a building with a sign that read Hotel and Boarding House. He dismounted stiffly, his movements showing exhaustion, then helped Rebecca down. Her legs nearly buckled. "Easy," he said, supporting her. "We're here. We made it." They stumbled to the door together. Luke pushed it open, and warmth rushed out to meet them. A woman looked up from behind a desk. She was middle-aged, round-faced, with kind eyes that widened when she saw them. "Good Lord, get in here before you freeze to death." They entered, snow falling from their clothes to puddle on the floor. Rebecca couldn't stop shaking, couldn't make her legs work properly. The woman bustled over. "You two look half dead. When's the last time you ate?" "2 days," Luke managed. "Jesus, Mary, and Joseph. Sit down. Both of you. I'll get food." Rebecca sank into a chair near the stove. Heat radiated from the iron, almost painful against her frozen skin. Luke stood at the window, watching the street. "You expecting trouble?" the woman asked, pausing in the doorway to what must be the kitchen. "Always," Luke said. She nodded like that, made perfect sense. "Name's Martha Hendricks. I run this place. You'll be safe here. I don't allow fighting or gunplay inside my hotel." "We'll need a room," Luke said. "2, if you have them." Martha looked between them, her expression thoughtful. "I've got one available." "You two married?" "No," Rebecca said quickly. "Engaged? And the order was supposed to decree what spas, sulast around her. In Montalige, where they're administration. There must place where a lost allows white. And then ticed. Cone strained in her. Lau fel might have done, call the crime placador sposed. No. Well then. 1 room, 2 beds. That's what I've got. You can take it or sleep in the stable." Luke looked at Rebecca, questioning. She nodded. After 2 nights pressed together in the cabin, sharing a room felt modest by comparison. "We'll take it," Luke said. "And we need to stable our horse. He's been through hell. I'll send my son to take care of him. You two just sit. Food's coming." Martha disappeared into the kitchen. True to her word, she returned minutes later with bowls of hot stew and thick slices of bread. The smell alone nearly made Rebecca cry. She forced herself to eat slowly. Her stomach had shrunk over the last 2 days. Too much too fast would make her sick. But God, it was the best food she'd ever tasted. Luke ate with the same careful control, though she could see the effort it cost him. When the bowls were empty, Martha refilled them. By the 3rd bowl, Rebecca felt human again. Her body stopped shaking. Her mind cleared. Martha brought coffee, hot and black and perfect. Rebecca wrapped her hands around the mug and nearly moaned with pleasure. "You two were caught in the storm?" Martha asked, settling into a chair across from them. "Something like that." Luke said carefully. Martha's eyes missed nothing. And you're running from something. Or someone. Luke tensed. What makes you say that? Honey, I've been running this hotel for 20 years. I know the look. Question is, should I be worried? You bring trouble to my door? Rebecca spoke before Luke could. The trouble's not ours. We're just trying to survive it. Martha studied her, then nodded slowly. All right. I believe you. But you should know, there's been men asking around town. 6 of them showed up yesterday before the storm hit. Said they were looking for an outlaw and a woman. Luke's hand moved toward his gun, then stopped. They give names? Said the outlaw was Luke Carson, wanted for robbery. Said the woman was Rebecca Mackenzie. They claimed she was kidnapped. Rebecca's blood went cold. That's a lie. I figured. Man who kidnaps a woman doesn't usually look at her like she hung the moon. Martha sipped her own coffee. Those men are staying at the saloon. Haven't come around here yet, but they will eventually. We'll leave first thing in the morning, Luke said. You'll do no such thing. You're half dead from exposure and starvation. You leave now, you'll die on the prairie. Martha's voice turned firm. You'll stay here. Rest. Get your strength back. I'll keep your presence quiet. Why would you help us? Rebecca asked. Because I've been running from something myself once. And someone helped me when I needed it. Now I'm paying that forward. The simple kindness of it made Rebecca's throat tight. After 3 years of trusting no one, of expecting nothing but cruelty, Martha's words felt like a miracle. Thank you, she whispered. Martha smiled. Don't thank me yet. Those men will find you eventually. When they do, you'll need a plan. Luke nodded grimly. Working on that. Martha showed them to their room upstairs. It was small, but clean, with 2 narrow beds and a window overlooking the street. A wash basin sat on a dresser. Clean towels hung on a rack. Outhouse is out back, Martha said. Chamber pot under the bed if you need it at night. I'll bring hot water for washing in the morning. You need anything else? This is more than enough, Rebecca said. When Martha left, Rebecca and Luke stood awkwardly in the room. After 2 nights sleeping pressed together, the separate beds seemed strange. Formal. I can sleep on the floor if you want, Luke offered. Don't be ridiculous. You're exhausted. So are you. Rebecca sat on one of the beds. The mattress was soft, the blankets clean. Luxury beyond measure after the cabin floor. Luke, we survived a blizzard together. I think we can handle sleeping in the same room. He smiled tiredly. Fair point. They took turns washing with the cold water in the basin. Rebecca did what she could to clean her face and hands, wishing desperately for a proper bath. Her hair was a tangled mess, her dress filthy and torn. She looked like exactly what she was. A woman who'd been through hell. Luke wasn't much better. 3 days of stubble darkened his jaw. His clothes were stained and worn. But when he looked at her, his eyes were warm. You should sleep, he said. I'll keep watch. You need sleep too. I'll rest later. Right now, I need to know you're safe. Rebecca wanted to argue, but exhaustion pulled at her like a physical weight. She lay down on the bed, still wearing Luke's coat over her dress, and closed her eyes. "Luke?" she said quietly. "Yeah?" She said no order supposed betri what's nus supposed to round her. Like you mentioned in the story, where there are not her him, where there must place where lost whiles white, al left tie-end. Cone let dranding attempt to get out of them. I also minded then, call the crime pecador spose. I'm glad you threw me over your shoulder and ran. She heard him laugh softly. Me too, Rebecca. Me too. Sleep took her under like a wave. Rebecca woke to gray morning light and the smell of coffee. For a moment, she couldn't remember where she was. Then it all came back. The storm, the journey, redemption. She sat up. Luke was at the window, looking out at the street. He'd removed his coat, but still wore his gun. He looked like he hadn't slept at all. "Anything?" she asked. "Martha brought coffee an hour ago. Said Sutton's men are still at the saloon. They'll start searching today." Rebecca stood and moved to his side. The street below was quiet, covered in a fresh layer of snow. A few people were out, shoveling paths. Everything looked peaceful. But she knew it wouldn't last. "We need to figure this out," she said. "We can't keep running forever." "I know. So what do we do?" Luke turned to face her. "I've been thinking about that. Sutton wants two things: the land your cabin sits on, and me dead. If we can deal with both problems at once, maybe we can end this." "How?" "By proving I'm innocent. If I can clear my name, I'm no longer a convenient target. And if Sutton loses his men's support because they realize they've been chasing an innocent man, his power weakens. How do you prove you're innocent?" "The money he claims I stole was paid to him by the Territorial Bank. There's a record. If I can get to the bank, get copies of the transactions, I can prove the money was never stolen. It was payment for land he took illegally." Rebecca considered. "That's a long shot. It's all I've got. What about my land? Even if you clear your name, Sutton still wants my property." Luke's jaw tightened. "Then we make it too expensive for him to take." "How?" "File a formal complaint with the territorial governor. Document everything Sutton's done. The harassment, the destruction of your cabin, the men he sent after you. Make enough noise that Sutton's activities get investigated. He's been operating in the shadows. Let's drag him into the light." It was bold, dangerous, probably doomed to fail, but it was better than running forever. "I'm in," Rebecca said. "What do we need to do first?" Before Luke could answer, footsteps pounded on the stairs. Martha burst through the door, her face pale. "They're coming! 4 of Sutton's men, heading this way. Someone must have seen you arrive last night." Luke moved instantly. He grabbed his coat, checked his gun. "Back door?" "Through the kitchen." "But hurry." Rebecca pulled on her boots, hands shaking. After everything they'd survived, were they going to be caught now? Luke took her hand. "Stay close to me. We'll get through this." They ran. Martha led them downstairs through the kitchen. A young man, her son probably, stood at the back door. "Horses are saddled and ready. Go now." Luke paused long enough to press something into Martha's hand. "Money. Thank you. For everything." Then they were outside, running through the snow to where two horses stood waiting. Not Luke's bay, but fresh mounts. Martha had thought of everything. They swung into the saddles, just as shouts erupted from the front of the hotel. "Ride," Luke said. They rode. Behind them, Sutton's men poured around the building. Gunshots cracked through the cold air. Rebecca leaned low over her horse's neck, urging the animal faster. The town fell away. They hit the open prairie at full gallop, snow spraying from the horses' hooves. More gunshots. Closer this time. Luke veered left, heading for a line of trees in the distance. Cover. They just needed to reach cover. Rebecca's horse stumbled, throwing her forward. She clung to the animal's mane, barely keeping her seat. The horse recovered and surged on. They reached the trees. Luke didn't slow down, weaving between trunks with expert horsemanship. Rebecca followed, branches whipping past her face. The gunfire stopped. Either they were out of range, or the men had lost them in the trees. Luke finally slowed. They stopped in a small clearing, both horses blowing hard. "You okay?" Luke asked. Rebecca nodded, not trusting her voice. He rode close and took her hand, squeezing gently. "We're okay. We're alive. For now. For now is all we've got." They kept moving. Slower now, but steady. Luke seemed to know where he was going, following game trails and creek beds that hid their tracks. By afternoon, they stopped to rest the horses. Rebecca slid from the saddle, her legs shaking. Fear and adrenaline were wearing off, leaving exhaustion in their wake. Luke caught her when she swayed. "Easy. When's the last time you slept properly?" "About 3 years ago." He smiled, but his eyes were concerned. "We need to find shelter, somewhere safe to hole up for a few days." "Where?" "Sutton's men know what we look like now. Every town in the territory will be watching for us." "Not every town." Luke looked thoughtful. "There's a Cheyenne camp about 2 days north. The chief, Running Bear, he's a friend. Fought with me in the war. He'll give us sanctuary." "You're sure?" "As sure as I can be about anything right now." It wasn't much of a plan, but it was something. They rode north as the sun set, painting the snow-covered prairie orange and pink. The storm had passed completely now, leaving brilliant clear skies and brutal cold. Stars appeared one by one as darkness fell. Luke found them shelter in a shallow cave, barely more than an overhang. He built a fire while Rebecca tended the horses. They had no food beyond what Martha had tucked into the saddlebags, dried meat and hard biscuits, but it was better than nothing. They sat close to the fire, sharing the single blanket Martha had provided. "Tell me about Running Bear," Rebecca said. "Met him during the war. His people were scouting for the Union, trying to protect their lands from Confederate raiders. We fought side by side in 3 battles. He saved my life twice. I saved his once. That makes us brothers in Cheyenne tradition. Will his people accept me?" "They'll accept anyone I vouch for. And once they hear your story, they'll help. Running Bear has no love for men like Sutton. He's seen what land greed does to innocent people." Rebecca leaned against Luke's shoulder. He stiffened for a moment, then relaxed, his arm coming around her. "We're going to get through this," he said quietly. "I promise." "You can't promise that," Watch me." She tilted her head to look up at him. In the firelight, his face was all sharp angles and shadows. Beautiful, in a rough way. Strong. Safe. "Luke?" she said. "Yeah?" She said Nord or supposed Betri, what's nus, supposed to round her. Like you mentioned in the story, where there are not her him, where there must place where lost whiles white, al left cone let dranding attempt to get out of them. I also minded then, call the crime and pecador spose. Kiss me again. His eyes darkened. "You sure?" "I'm sure." This time, the kiss wasn't tentative. Luke's hand slid into her hair, tilting her head back. His lips moved against hers with confidence, with heat. Rebecca's hands fisted in his shirt, pulling him closer. The kiss deepened. Luke's other arm wrapped around her waist, holding her tight against him. She could feel his heart pounding, matching the frantic rhythm of her own. When they finally broke apart, both breathing hard, Luke pressed his forehead to hers. "Rebecca, I know. This is complicated. That's putting it mildly." But he smiled. "Still, I don't regret it. Neither do I." They held each other as the fire burned low and the stars wheeled overhead. Two broken people, finding unexpected wholeness in each other's arms. 2 days of hard riding brought them to Running Bear's camp. It sat in a valley protected from the worst of the winter wind, a collection of hide lodges arranged in a circle. Smoke rose from cooking fires. Children played in the snow. People stopped and stared as Luke and Rebecca rode in. Warriors reached for weapons, then relaxed when Running Bear emerged from the largest lodge. He was tall, broad-shouldered, with long black hair streaked with gray. His face was weathered, but dignified. When he saw Luke, a smile broke across his features. "Brother," Running Bear said in accented English. "It has been too long." Luke dismounted and embraced him. "Too long indeed. I'm sorry to arrive with trouble. Trouble is welcome if it brings old friends." Running Bear's eyes moved to Rebecca. "And who is this?" "Rebecca Mackenzie. She's..." Luke hesitated. "She's important to me." Running Bear's smile widened. "I see. Welcome, Rebecca Mackenzie. Any friend of my brother is welcome in our camp." Rebecca slid from her horse. "Thank you for your hospitality. Come. We will feed you, give you shelter. Then you will tell me this trouble you speak of." They followed Running Bear to his lodge. Inside, a fire burned in the center. The chief's wife, a woman with gentle eyes and work-worn hands, brought them food and water. Over the meal, Luke explained everything. Sutton, the false accusations, the attack on Rebecca's cabin, the men hunting them. Running Bear listened without interrupting. When Luke finished, the chief was quiet for a long moment. Then he spoke. "This Bartholomew Sutton, I know of him. He tried to buy land from my people last year. When we refused, his men poisoned our water source. We had to move our camp." Luke's jaw tightened. "I didn't know that. We do not speak of it with outsiders. But you are not an outsider, brother." Running Bear looked at Rebecca. "Your fight is righteous. This man takes what is not his and destroys those who resist. This cannot continue. Can you help us?" Rebecca asked. "We will give you sanctuary as long as you need." and I will send riders to the territorial capital with your testimony. My voice carries weight with the governor. He listens when I speak of injustice. Hope flickered in Rebecca's chest. Thank you. Running Bear smiled. Do not thank me yet. Sutton is powerful. This fight will not be easy. I know, Luke said, but we're tired of running. Then you will stand. And we will stand with you. They stayed in the Cheyenne camp for 5 days. Running Bear sent his fastest riders with written testimonies from both Luke and Rebecca, along with the chief's own account of Sutton's crimes. The territorial governor was known to be fair-minded. If the evidence was strong enough, he might act. During those days, Rebecca learned about the Cheyenne people, their customs, their stories, their strength. The women taught her how they preserved food for winter, how they made clothing from hide and sinew. The men showed Luke their horses, comparing notes on training and care. At night, Rebecca and Luke sat by the fire in the guest lodge Running Bear had provided. They talked for hours, learning each other's stories, the big moments and the small ones, favorite memories and deepest fears. What do you want? Luke asked one night. After all this is over, what does your future look like? Rebecca considered. A month ago, she would have said safety, a place to hide, walls thick enough to keep the world out. Now, she wanted something different. I want a home, she said slowly. Not just a house, but a real home, with someone who sees me as a partner, not property. Someone I can trust completely. She looked at him. Someone like you. Luke's hand found hers. Rebecca, I'm a wanted man. Even if we clear my name, I've got nothing. No land, no money, no prospects. I can't offer you the life you deserve. I don't want the life I deserve. I want the life I choose. And I choose you, Luke Carson, if you'll have me. His eyes searched hers. You're sure? This won't be easy. Nothing worth having ever is. Luke pulled her close and kissed her like she was air, and he'd been drowning. Like she was the answer to every question he'd never asked. When they broke apart, he cupped her face in his hands. I love you, he said. The words were rough, unpracticed, like he'd never said them before. I didn't plan to, didn't think I could, but I do. I love you, Rebecca Mackenzie. Joy exploded through her chest, so intense it nearly hurt. I love you too. They held each other as the fire burned low, making quiet promises about the future they'd build together. On the 6th day, Running Bear's riders returned. With them came a representative from the territorial governor's office, a stern-faced man named Samuel Crawford. He listened to their story again, asked pointed questions, examined the evidence. Finally, he nodded. The governor is prepared to launch a formal investigation into Bartholomew Sutton's activities. The charges are serious: land fraud, intimidation, destruction of property, attempted murder. If even half of this is true, he'll face justice. What about the charges against me? Luke asked. Crawford consulted his papers. The bank records show no theft occurred. The money Sutton claimed was stolen was actually a legal payment for land acquisition. The charges against you are being dropped. You're a free man, Mr. Carson. Luke's knees nearly buckled. Free. After months of running, he was free. Rebecca grabbed his hand, squeezing tight. What about Rebecca's property? Luke asked. The destruction of Miss Mackenzie's cabin will be added to the charges against Sutton. She'll receive compensation for her losses. And her land claim is secure. No one can legally take it from her. Rebecca's throat tightened. Her land was safe. She could rebuild. Start over, but this time without fear. Crawford stood. Sutton's been taken into custody. His men have scattered. Some might still cause trouble, but without their boss, they're just common criminals. You're both safe now. After Crawford left, Rebecca and Luke stood in the center of Running Bear's lodge, holding each other. Relief and joy and disbelief all tangled together. "It's over," Rebecca whispered. "It's over," Luke agreed. Then he pulled back to look at her. "So what now?" "Now we go home. Your cabin's destroyed. Then we rebuild it. Together." Luke smiled, the expression transforming his face. "I like the sound of that." Running Bear approached, his own smile wide. "You will stay for the celebration tonight, yes? My people wish to honor your victory." "We'd be honored," Rebecca said. That night, the camp celebrated with food and stories and dancing. Rebecca sat beside Luke, his arm around her waist, and watched the fire leap toward the stars. She felt lighter than she had in years. Free, safe, loved. Luke leaned close, his breath warm against her ear. "Marry me." Rebecca turned to look at him. "What?" "Marry me. I know it's fast. I know we've only known each other a week. But I love you, and I want to build a life with you. A real life. So marry me, Rebecca Mackenzie." She should have hesitated, should have thought it through. They'd known each other barely more than a week, most of it spent running for their lives. But Rebecca had spent 3 years being careful, being cautious, playing it safe. She was done with safe. "Yes," she said. "Yes, I'll marry you." Luke whooped and pulled her into his arms, spinning her around. The Cheyenne people cheered, understanding even without words. Running Bear stepped forward, his eyes twinkling. "Then let us make it official. In Cheyenne tradition, I can perform the ceremony. Tonight, if you wish." Rebecca looked at Luke. He looked at her. They both nodded. "Tonight," Luke said. The ceremony was simple and beautiful. Running Bear spoke in Cheyenne and English, binding them together with words about partnership and respect and love. They exchanged no rings, but Luke took a strip of leather and tied it gently around Rebecca's wrist, and she did the same for him. When Running Bear pronounced them married, Luke kissed her to the sound of drums and cheering. Rebecca kissed him back, tasting joy and tears and the promise of tomorrow. They spent their wedding night in the guest lodge, wrapped in each other's arms. Luke was gentle, patient, asking permission with every touch. Rebecca gave herself to him freely, without fear, and discovered that intimacy could be beautiful when it was built on love and trust. Afterward, they lay tangled together beneath warm furs, the fire burning low. "I never thought I'd have this," Rebecca whispered. "A husband who loves me, a future that doesn't terrify me. I never thought I'd deserve it," Luke said. "But you make me want to be better. To be the man you see when you look at me. You already are that man. You just needed someone to show you." They held each other as sleep came. Two people who'd found home in each other's arms. They left the Cheyenne camp 2 days later with supplies, fresh horses as gifts from Running Bear, and promises to return. The chief embraced Luke one final time. "You have found what matters, brother. Treasure it." "I will," Luke promised. The ride back to Rebecca's land took 3 days. When they arrived, Rebecca's heart sank. Her cabin was barely standing. One wall completely collapsed. The roof caved in. Everything inside was destroyed or stolen. But Luke just smiled and dismounted. "Good thing we're starting fresh anyway." Over the next weeks, they worked side by side to rebuild. Luke proved skilled with his hands, cutting timber and fitting joints. Rebecca proved just as capable, mixing mortar and driving nails. Neighbors, including the Hendersons, came to help. Word had spread about Sutton's arrest, and people who'd been too afraid to speak out before now came forward with support. The new cabin rose from the ashes of the old, bigger this time, stronger, with a proper bedroom and a kitchen that could hold a real stove. Luke built a barn for the horses and a chicken coop for the hens Mrs. Henderson gave them as a wedding gift. One evening, as the sun set over their land, Luke and Rebecca stood on their new porch. The cabin was finished. Furniture was being delivered tomorrow. Their life together was really beginning. Luke pulled Rebecca close. "What are you thinking?" "That I'm happy. Really, truly happy. For the first time in years." "Me too." He kissed the top of her head. "I still can't believe you married me. I can't believe you asked. But I'm glad you did." They stood together, watching the sky turn orange and pink and purple. Somewhere in the distance, a coyote called. The wind carried the scent of prairie grass and possibility. "Luke?" Rebecca said. "Yeah?" She said Nord or supposed Betry, what's nus, supposed to rounder. "Like you mentioned in the story, where there are not her him, where there must place where lost whiles white, I'll let tie-end. Cone let dranding attend to get out of them. I also minded then, call the crime and pecador spose. Thank you for throwing me over your shoulder and running. Best thing that ever happened to me." He laughed, the sound rich and free. "Best thing that ever happened to both of us." That night, they christened their new home properly. Made love in their own bed, in their own cabin, on their own land. No fear, no running. Just love and joy and the promise of forever. As Rebecca fell asleep in Luke's arms, she thought about the journey that had brought them here, the terror and the cold and the desperate flight, but also the courage and the connection and the love that had grown in the most unlikely circumstances. She'd run from one dangerous man and straight into the arms of the one man who would never hurt her, who would protect her, who would love her exactly as she was. Sometimes, she thought, the worst moments lead to the best outcomes. Sometimes, you have to lose everything to find what really matters. She pressed closer to Luke, feeling his steady heartbeat beneath her cheek. "I love you," she whispered. "I love you too," he murmured, already half asleep. "Always will." Rebecca closed her eyes and let peace wash over her. This was home. This was safety. This was love. And it was more than she'd ever dared to dream. The weeks that followed brought a rhythm to their lives. They worked the land together, planting a winter garden in the root cellar and preparing for spring crops. Luke proved to be a skilled rancher, and they talked about buying cattle come summer. Rebecca discovered she had a talent for managing their finances, carefully recording every expense and income. Word came that Bartholomew Sutton had been sentenced to 20 years in prison for his crimes. His ranch was being sold off to compensate his victims. Rebecca and Luke each received a settlement that gave them the capital they needed to truly build their future. The Hendersons became close friends, visiting often and sharing meals. Mrs. Henderson taught Rebecca her recipes, while Mr. Henderson and Luke talked horses and weather and crops. It felt like family. One morning in early spring, Rebecca woke feeling strange. Her stomach was unsettled, and certain smells made her nauseous. Luke worried it was illness, but Mrs. Henderson, visiting that afternoon, took one look at Rebecca and smiled knowingly. "You're with child, dear," she said gently. Rebecca's hand flew to her stomach. A baby. She and Luke were going to have a baby. When she told Luke that evening, he stared at her in wonder. Then he swept her up in his arms, spinning her carefully. "A baby. We're having a baby. Are you happy?" Rebecca asked, suddenly nervous. "Happy? I'm terrified and thrilled, and so in love with you, I can't breathe." He set her down gently, his hands on her still flat stomach. "A family. We're making a family." Tears spilled down Rebecca's cheeks. "I never thought I'd have this. A good man, a safe home, a child to love. You have all of it, and you're going to be an amazing mother." They held each other as the sun set through their window, painting the room in shades of gold. Spring turned to summer. Rebecca's belly grew, and Luke became impossibly protective, insisting she rest while he handled the heavier chores. She argued at first, then let him fuss, because she saw how much joy it brought him. Running Bear and his wife visited in late summer, bringing gifts for the coming baby. Hand-sewn clothes, and a beautiful cradle carved from oak. They stayed for a week, and Running Bear and Luke spent hours talking about fatherhood and responsibility. "A child is the greatest gift," Running Bear said, "and the greatest challenge. But you will be a good father, brother. I know this." Luke looked uncertain. "How can you be sure?" "Because you love their mother completely. That is where good fatherhood begins." In the cool of an autumn evening, Rebecca went into labor. Luke sent for Mrs. Henderson while he paced and worried. The labor was long and difficult, but when their son finally entered the world with a lusty cry, Luke wept with relief and joy. Rebecca held their baby, exhausted but radiant. "He's perfect." Luke knelt beside the bed, touching his son's tiny hand with one finger. The baby gripped it, and Luke's expression melted into pure love. "He is. What should we name him?" "I was thinking James," Rebecca said softly, "after my father. James Running Bear Carson." Luke's eyes filled. "Perfect. Absolutely perfect." The months that followed were filled with sleepless nights and endless joy. James was a healthy, happy baby who seemed to smile at everything. Luke was a devoted father, walking the floor at night when the baby cried, changing diapers without complaint, singing rough lullabies in his deep voice. Rebecca watched her husband with their son and fell in love with him all over again. This strong, brave man who'd saved her life and stolen her heart was gentle as could be with their tiny boy. One evening, as winter approached again, they sat together on the porch. James slept in Rebecca's arms, wrapped in one of the blankets Running Bear's wife had made. Luke's arm was around Rebecca's shoulders. "You know what I realized today?" Rebecca said quietly. "What's that?" "A year ago, I was alone and terrified. I had nothing but a tiny cabin and fear. Now I have everything. A husband who loves me, a son who's perfect, a home that's truly ours, and friends who care. My life completely changed in the span of a single year." Luke kissed her temple. "Mine too. A year ago, I was running with no hope of ever stopping. No future, no family, nothing to live for except survival. Now I have reasons to wake up every morning. You and James, this ranch, the life we're building. You gave me all of that, Rebecca. We gave it to each other." "Fair point," he smiled. "Still can't believe you said yes when I asked you to marry me. Best decision you ever made." "Second best," Rebecca corrected. "The best decision was not shooting you when you ran toward my cabin." Luke laughed, the sound carrying across their land. "True. Very true." They sat together as the sun set, painting the prairie in shades of gold and crimson. Their son slept peacefully. Their horses grazed in the pasture. Smoke rose from their chimney, warm and welcoming. This was their life. Hard-won, deeply cherished, built on love and trust and the courage to take a chance on each other. Rebecca looked up at Luke. "I love you, more than I thought possible to love anyone. I love you too. You're my home, Rebecca. You and James. Everything I need is right here." He kissed her softly, a promise and a celebration all at once. As darkness fell and stars appeared one by one, they went inside together. Luke banked the fire while Rebecca settled James in his cradle. Then they stood together at the window, looking out at the land they'd claimed and the life they'd built. "Thank you," Rebecca said softly, "for running toward danger instead of away from it, for saving me, for loving me." "Thank you for trusting me," Luke replied, "for seeing past the wanted man to who I really was, for building this life with me." They turned to each other and shared a kiss, tender and full of promise. Outside, the wind whispered through the prairie grass. Inside, their home was warm and safe and filled with love. Rebecca Mackenzie Carson had finally found what she'd been searching for. Not just safety or shelter, but a true home, a partner who cherished her, a family to love, a future bright with possibility. And it had all started the day a stranger threw her over his shoulder and ran. They stood at that window for a long time, just holding each other. Luke's arms were strong and sure around her, and Rebecca felt completely safe, completely loved, completely home. "Come to bed," Luke whispered finally. "Tomorrow's another day of building our life together." Rebecca smiled and let him lead her to their bedroom. They checked on James one more time, both marveling at how perfect he was. How miraculous. Then, they climbed into bed together, curling into each other like they'd been doing it for decades instead of just a year. As sleep pulled at her, Rebecca thought about everything that had led to this moment. The fear, and the cold, and the desperate running. The blizzard that should have killed them. The men who'd tried to destroy them. But also the courage, and the love, and the trust that had grown between two broken people. The second chances they'd given each other. The life they'd chosen to build together. She pressed a kiss to Luke's chest, right over his heart. I'm so glad you ran toward my cabin that day. Best decision I ever made, he murmured, already half asleep. Love you forever, Rebecca. Love you forever, too. They drifted off together, wrapped in warmth and safety and the absolute certainty that they'd found what really mattered. Not just survival, but a life worth living. Not just shelter, but a home filled with love. Outside, the prairie stretched endlessly beneath a sky full of stars. Their land, their future, their happy ending, earned through courage and trust and love that refused to give up. And in the morning, they'd wake up together and start building tomorrow.